Astra travelers, and welcome to the Season 6 premiere of Tales of Teyvat, a Genshin Lore Podcast. Seems like we're pretty lucky the Fatui didn't get us yet.
Not yet.
Not yet, but we're keeping an eye. They're on their way. This week, however, we will be returning to 1.1 as we discuss the Unreconciled Stars Event and our look at the Fatui. As our second look at the Fatui?
I think it's technically our first look at this Fatui.
Our 700th look at the Fatui.
Yeah.
I don't remember when we met Signora in comparison to this event.
Well, Dragonspine wasn't out yet. No, that doesn't matter because we would have met Signora. Because if you'd already done the Venti Archon.
But would we? Because 1.1 was the whole Archon out. Anyway, we'll get into that later. We're going to be talking about Unreconciled Stars, the 1.1 flagship event today.
Are you trying to find something real to look at? Ain't nothing like the real thing, baby. So set your sights on our site at talesofteyvat.com, where each episode we do has a definitely not false page where you can see visuals and points of reference covered. And it probably won't put you in a coma.
Hopefully.
I can't promise anything. While you're on our site, check out our past episodes and seasons, artist spotlights from the community for every topic, and some other goodies.
Finally, feel free to email us at talesofteyvatpod@gmail.com to let us know what you think of this week's episode and what topics you'd like to see in the future. Feel free to give us a rating on any podcasting platform so travelers can know if we are maybe sort of something they may want to check out. And please feel free to join our 18+ Discord server, Shades of Teyvat. You can do that by going to bit.ly/Shades of Teyvat, all lowercase, no spaces. So we're going to move on to the first ever, I'm saying that, it's probably wrong, but the biggest...
1.1, how early there couldn't have been another one.
You never know, let me tell you.
Well, flagship kind of gives it too.
The first event that was like a big deal, and one of the events that is very gatekeeps a lot of lore. They released the first one and we're like, ha ha ha, we're going to release an event that literally 90% of the player base is never going to see. Ha 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 ha.
Yeah. Hopefully you were smart enough to be with us in the beginning.
I guess who wasn't? Me.
Or me.
Or me.
Yeah, I was going to say, when did you start playing, Brandon?
I think it wasn't until January, I want to say. So I definitely missed this because this started on November 16th, 2020, which was like half a month after the game was released?
Yeah, I think so.
So literally just weeks after the game started.
And even like Dragonspine wasn't even released when this came out too. Like they could see it, it was there, but
yeah, you
couldn't go frolic.
You want to know something really funny as like a player nowadays? Is that, you know, when we played and Dragonspine was released, Liyue was released when I played, I think Inazuma was out. But people apparently keep thinking that you have to like go through Dragonspine to get to Liyue. And so in one of the most recent updates, they added like this random bitch from the Adventurers Guild. And she like guides you to Liyue basically to be like, come around the mountain. We were playing the other night with Vanessa, and she was like, who is she? I was like, I don't know. And then I was like, I have that quest too. What the heck?
Like, I've already gotten to Liyue. What are you talking about?
It's like, who are you? But yeah, she like shows you the way. It's so weird. But 1.1 Unreconciled Stars, none of us played it. So we are all going to be talking about watching playthroughs and other player discussions about the event. But we do have quite the cast of characters. And for the most part, these were all the first time meeting these characters, right? Like, we hadn't met Fischl, Skara, or Mona prior to the event.
We kind of sound like we met Mona.
You could have met Mona or could not have. They had it set up to where if you met her before, then you were just like, oh, hey, it's Mona. And then if you hadn't met her yet, they would sort of explain like who she was.
So Mona's story quest was released at this point.
Yes, but yeah, it is Fischl's introduction for sure.
And what an introduction it is.
Yes. And it establishes like Mona and Fischl as like a friendship where Mona's like, oh, you're kind of weird.
I like it.
But it's fine, I guess. I mean, I can be your friend. It's cool.
So just a quick recap on these three characters. We won't give anything away for the story yet, but just for them as a whole, you have Fischl, who's a member of the Adventurers Guild. Her real name is Amy. We have a whole episode on her. She's a theater kid gone personality change who now thinks that she's out of a book.
She's maybe a cosplayer, but maybe also possessed by the spirit of a traveler who jumps between different worlds, you know.
Yeah, but she still goes home to her mom's deli meat platter. So
yeah, her cold cut platter. It's infamous. You hungry? Go by Amy's house. You get some cold cuts.
If you seek Amy.
Fischl is also in Honkai Impact the Third as a playable character. And then we have Mona. Mona is our astrologist, Barbaloth's mentee. Barbaloth is one of the members of the Hexen Circle. If you met Mona at this point, you meet her in her story quest where she is trying to move to Mondstadt to find something, and it ends up being an empty box of Cleese. And then she moves into this strange little apartment. And then you have Scaramouche, who we know has gone through quite the journey. But he starts as a Fatui Harbinger. Actually, he starts as a puppet. Then he gets thrown in the trash. Then his friends all die. He has a villain storyline that starts. He joins the Fatui, travels amongst the abyss, tries to become a false god, and now he's Nahida's son.
Yep.
Nahida's
That is
son.
the too long to read version.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Now, I would like to say something really quickly just about Scaramouche. I think it was like last spring, maybe, or even the fall. I was at a convention and I got to meet Patrick Pedraza, I think it is. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, but he's the voice actor of Scaramouche. And when I was talking with him, I asked him if he knew that Scaramouche was going to become Wanderer and be where he is today. And he was like, no, they called me in for that 1.1 event. I thought I was done. He's like, I didn't think I'd ever hear from them again. And if you think about it, they didn't call him again until Inazuma. So he really probably was like, wow, this is done. I'm good. I had my stint. So I don't know. I just thought that was so funny. He was like, I had no idea. He has a color change now. It's like, yeah, he does. But it's just so funny how the voice actors really don't even know what's going to happen to their characters.
Yeah.
And I guess that's smart because they might end up telling us.
Or their jobs.
Oh, yeah, or their jobs. So, Pat, I hope you're okay. And everyone, but Pat, because I'm talking about you.
And Hoyo, I hope you get your shit together.
Yeah. So, now that we are crawling ourselves out of the voice actor abyss that they are all living, let's talk 1.1. So, we're going to do an event walkthrough first because so many people haven't played it, ourselves included. It's so important to understand what the fuck is going on. You start off in Mondstadt and you go up to Katheryne. She's acting sus as fuck. And she's like, oh, thank the Archons you're here. She starts to explain that there's been a meteor shower raining down rocks all over Mondstadt and Liyue, and that there are strange stories coming from places where meteors are landing, saying that people who touch these meteorites are falling into a deep sleep. It's no bueno. They've never seen it before. And Katheryne honestly seems unwell about it.
Yeah, she's a little worried.
Considering she's a robot from Shasnaya, like, it's interesting to see emotions.
Now, do you think that they already knew she was going to be a robot at this point?
I mean, she has a keyhole.
Yeah.
And doesn't she, like, go bee-boo bop or something? Like,
I don't know if she did back then.
Yeah, I don't know. That's the thing, because we weren't playing back then, so I don't know if that was something they added later.
If anybody was playing, if you did see her idol, like with her little over her head, she says like rebooting and like little weird things like that. And she has a key in the back of her head. Let us know if you did notice that when you were playing back then.
I mean, knowing how far in advance they do stuff in this game, they probably did plan it that way. But who knows, like, how far down the line that was passed? I mean, maybe the localizer and the actor didn't know yet.
So they played her with much empathy.
Right.
So Katheryne is like, I need your help. And all of a sudden, here comes Fischl and all her bullshit.
But it's so great. It's the first time we get Fischl like being all crazy and saying it's like ignorance that they don't know her and how could that be and blah 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 and it's not our fault but they should know who we are and blah all this stuff and Oz is like she says hello.
When Katheryne introduces her, she says that as Fischl shows up, Paimon panics at a speaking bird, which I'm like, Paimon, just wait until what you're going to see down the road.
Or how about Paimon, look in a mirror. You're a floating fairy.
Well, at least she's humanoid, like I could get it a little bit. But yeah, she's like looking at this freaking bird and she's like, oh, and I'm like, a squirrel's going to talk to you. A boat's going to talk to you. Paper mache. Mushrooms. You got a lot coming, Paimon, so be prepped.
The R&R and the Pari, whatever those are.
Yeah, like crabs. You're gonna have to literally fight crabs. Like crab rave who?
A pixelated dragon.
Yeah. Wait, just wait. So when Katheryne introduces us to Fischl, she says that Fischl is a senior member of the Adventurers Guild, which is curious given her age. She does seem like 16, 17, and she's a senior member. Like, what's going on over there?
No one else is there. Everyone left with Farka.
No, those are the knights, Brandon.
Oh, sorry. You're right. The Adventurers Guild.
Just Bennett and all his 80 dads.
Well, there's a little bit later, though, that Mona says, like, about going out for a drink to her. So I think she's 18. If we've already established that you can drink at 18 in Mondstadt, if we go with that.
Which we do because it's Germany.
Which I thought you could drink at 16.
I was going to say, is it 16?
Oh, maybe it's 16.
Oh, no.
But I was going to say that maybe a lot of the adventurers in the Adventurers Guild don't have visions, and that's why she's a senior member.
That's a actually great point.
Okay. Good point.
Because I feel like we run into a lot of adventurers that don't have them.
All the ones that are wearing green.
Yeah.
The entire Adventurers Guild, basically. Yeah. Got it.
Well, and Amber.
She has a vision.
She's a knight.
She's a knight now. Oh, I made her an adventurer there for a second. Sorry.
Yeah, she's technically a knight. Yeah.
They cross over in my brain.
Me too. Yeah, I don't know why.
But basically, we're told by Katheryne that we are pairing up with Fischl and that we are going to be going and looking into this together. Basically, the Adventurers Guild does not want anyone to be going out alone, given the circumstances. So they're pairing everybody up. And just a reminder to travelers, because we don't really talk a lot about the Adventurers Guild, but the Adventurers Guild is stationed in every nation. There's a Katheryne everywhere, and Katherine's like the secretary of the Adventurers Guild. The Adventurers Guild is a Snezhnaya-based faction of adventurers, which is kind of fun because Child's dad is said to be adventurer, so I wonder if he's also in the Adventurers Guild. They have branches across Teyvat. I think the one in Mondstadt is the most obvious, because not only do they have Katherine's little booth, but they also have a pretty big building where a guy named Cyrus is standing outside of it. He's the branch manager for Mondstadt, not to be confused with Cyno's dad, of course. That is a different Cyrus, one of the few name duplicates we have in this game. But basically, there's a Katheryne who's like the receptionist of the Adventurers Guild in every nation because she's a fucking robot. And yeah, that's the Adventurers Guild. They all wear green usually.
Yes, and there's different branch masters, and the branch master in Liyue, whose name is Lan, Lan, has some dialogue that indicates that the headquarters of the Adventurers Guild is in Snezhnaya. So
the adventurers are in charge of this, and they're telling us we have to go 2 by 2 out into the woods to figure out what these meteors are doing. So our first stop is Springvale. So we head over there and we run into a knight named Joyce. And Joyce is like, do not touch the rocks. And Fischl kind of looks at her with her one eye and is like, fuck you. I'm Fischl, the Prinzessin. I can do whatever the fuck I want. But I'm not going to touch it because I'm scared.
That was a great impression.
Thank you. I've been practicing the entire break.
Yeah.
So we go up and we see that there's a victim sleeping and there's a nurse named Edna there. This was the funniest thing. This lady comes up and she goes, hi, I'm Nurse Edna. And Fischl's basically like, who are you? Who? And I'm like, she literally just fucking introduced herself.
That and she's a nun, so you'd imagine that she's been over in Mondstadt.
Well, because then Oz goes, basically is like, she means the guy behind you, Nurse Edna. It's just, my head was like doing a double take. I was like, Fischl, are you okay. And so we look behind and we see they know his name, and we try talking to him. We can't get him to wake up. And Fischl is like, how dare they curse the coveted domain of the Spring Fairy? She's pissed. So then all of a sudden Draff runs up to us, and Draff, for those who don't remember, is Diona's alcoholic father who's in charge of like the hunters in Springvale. And he basically tells us that Alan, one of his guys, ran off to check out the meteorites without telling anybody, and that he needs our help rescuing him.
Freaking Alan.
Yeah. So we go and we find Alan and we save him before he falls asleep. And Paimon says, next time you think about doing something stupid, think again. I was like, Paimon.
I like that Draff yells at him too, like a little kid. I think he like parents Alan and the other hunters more than he parents Diona.
Well, I think there's good cause for that, though, because if you think about our beloved 18th Fatui Harbinger, Timmy, Timmy's dad is a hunter that works under Draff who died out while they were hunting. So I almost wonder if Draff is being overprotective as a trauma response to Timmy's dad's death.
Oh, totally.
I just made it dark.
And Diona's like, what about your actual daughter over here?
Yeah. Diona's like 4 feet from him. And he's just standing there being lied to, and then lying to pigeons because he lies to them. They told me.
The pigeons told you that he lies? That Timmy lies?
Yeah, Timmy lies.
I don't really believe the pigeons. I think they're lying.
Nope.
Whatever, Timmy sympathizer.
Well, what I was going to say, though, is that Diona does have a vision. She does seem to be pretty put together. And rumor has it she doesn't have a dead mom. She has an alive mom. So Diona has other people to go to besides her alcoholic father. Just saying. These guys might not have supports, you know? They're the heads of the household. Toxic masculinity. They're not allowed to show their emotions.
And they're alcoholics.
Oh, they're allowed. They just don't.
They just don't. Well, they're not allowing themselves.
Uh-huh. And that's their fault.
Was that...
Machismo?
Methuselah?
No, neither one of those words were what I was thinking. I was thinking like...
Marshmallow.
Manliness. I don't
Mary
know.
Poppins.
Mary Poppins?
Masculine?
Mastodon.
I think I was going to say masochistic. That doesn't make sense.
Masochistic?
No. Yeah, it's not really masochistic.
I'm just projecting. Anyway, so Alan gets, yelled at. Paimon sasses him. And then out of nowhere, Fischl's vision starts to flash. And we're like, whoa there, cowboy, what's going on? And Fischl starts saying something. No one knows what the fuck she's saying. And Paimon's like, Oz, can you Google translate this? Like, I don't fucking understand. So Oz explains that Fischl's vision must be reacting to a strong elemental energy nearby, which is curious because in the first part of the Mondstadt Archon line, when we meet Lisa, she describes the ley lines and the elemental energy of Mondstadt to be akin to like a yarn ball that a cat is playing with. Like, it's just a mess, and it's everywhere. So now we're seeing that there's some strong elemental energy going on in Mondstadt right off the bat in this event.
Yeah, and I want to revisit this when we get to what's causing the trouble.
Of course. And so we decide that we're going to go and try to collect some of these meteorite fragments, which made no sense why that was our plan of action. It's like we wanted to fall asleep.
They gloss over how we actually get rid of them. It's just like, oh, we're going to go get rid of them. Like, what'd you do? Did you throw them in the ocean? Did you burn them?
I think we fight them. Almost like...
We fought the rocks.
Right? Like we're mining.
Yeah, but then that just breaks up into little more pieces. You're just making more.
And then I fed them to Timmy.
Though that explains a lot. Because you know what? If I end up nudging into Timmy, I do fall asleep.
I would assume that the Traveler touched it. Because we know the Traveler has like purifying energies and stuff like that.
That's a good point.
She's a shaman.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't know it, but is. So we return to Springvale, and we find out that ever since we started picking up rocks, that a lot of the victims have started to wake up. And so we decided to go and talk to some of them. And the first guy we talked to is Hartman, and he works at the Dawn Winery. And he said that in his dreams, he was hiking up a snowy mountain, but he wasn't in control of his body. And so everyone's initial thought is, Dragon Spine, which no one's ever been to, but they've seen.
Mm-hmm.
And we decided that we're going to like continue looking for shards. But in the meantime, we get told that Adeline who is head honcho of the Dawn Winery. Well, she's probably second in command next to D-Luke.
She's basically head honcho.
Yeah, like D-Luke's off killing Fatui 80% of the time. Like, she's in charge. It's also rumored amongst the other maids at the winery that she might be a cannibal. So that's always fun.
Oh.
So Adeline wants us to come to the winery. So we show up and we find out that her and Fischl have never met. So we introduce them. And Fischl is like, thank you so much for inviting me. I know how special I am. And Adeline is very grateful to us for getting Hartman back to the winery safe. And she said that she's a little worried about some of their other workers. And she basically thinks they might have got stuck in the same crossfire, right? Saw a meteor, went and touched it. And because so many of her workers are out sleeping, basically, Adeline is short-staffed and she can't leave to go check on them herself. So she basically asks us and Fischl to go check on them and see if we can find them. Specifically, two of them, Ben and Fritz. So we leave and she suggests that we go to Stonegate to check on them. When we get to Stonegate, we find and save Ben, who says that his cart actually got hit by the meteorite. And then he somehow got split up from Fritz.
Ben tells us Fritz's cart got all busted up and he's like over around the corner. So we head off to go find him up the road because he hadn't come back to him. That's when we see Fritz just blasted out on the ground. He looks like he was passed out. And yeah, there's a man in a peculiarly large hat standing over him in a very odd way.
With his little hat, scarves, drooping down.
We do not know his name. He never introduces himself in this moment, but he's like being really kind and sweet and soft. And he's like, baby girl, hey.
Doesn't he say he's a vagrant from Inazuma?
Mm-hmm.
And we're like, how did you get that hat?
Yeah, you're nicely dressed for a vagrant.
I mean, which Traveler even notes your hat is quite huge. And for those who don't know what a vagrant is a person who travels. They don't really have like a normal job. They don't really have a place that they call home. And they tend to wander from place to place. A lot of times they are assumed to be beggars, but not all the time. So just to give you an idea that that's what he is announcing himself as.
Foreshadowing the wanderer of it all.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
But I do also want to say that calling himself a vagrant from Inazuma isn't far off from the recent past at this point in the game. If you think about like what he was up to before he became a harbinger. Because he was kind of just wandering around Inazuma as a vagrant until the Fatui snatched him up.
He didn't actually lie to us.
Sort of like a delayed truth.
Yeah. Like he wasn't 100% honest, but he tried.
Yeah.
He also tells us that he used his magic to dispose of the meteorites. Why don't we ask him, like, what kind of magic you talking about?
Black magic, white magic, fake magic.
Puppet magic.
Well, maybe we didn't have time to actually ask him because that bitch beat feet real quick when a Millilith showed up.
Do you think his secret power is that his jaw is like a nutcracker?
What?
So he can just put the meteorites in his mouth and like clench his butt cheeks and he like cracks into it.
He might be cracking some people's nuts. But...
Oh my gosh. Why is he putting the rocks in his mouth?
I think
clenching his
puppets
butt
are similar to nutcrackers.
I mean,
haven't you ever seen a nutcracker puppet?
I've seen a nutcracker. I've never seen a nutcracker puppet.
I've cracked a nut.
I've seen some nuts in my days. But, you know, like I don't think I've ever heard them referred to as puppets.
Well, maybe they're not normally referred to as puppets, but they look very similar to like a puppet.
Yeah. Without the pooping out the nut.
Yeah. Without the hinged jaw. Which I guess a puppet can have.
But back to the nutcracker. He's not currently cracking nuts, but he is confused. Fischl goes on some long expose about vagrancies, and he literally looks at her and goes, excuse me? And I was like, honestly, Skara, same. No idea what just happened. And like Tiff said, all of a sudden the Millilith, her fave, shows up. And he's like, all right, bye!
And this was the Liyue Millilith, right?
This was the actual, yes, it was the Liyue Millilith. I don't want you to get confused between all the Millilith that exist in all of the other places in Teyvat.
Uh-huh.
Not to be confused with the Sumeru Millilith.
Yeah, the Notlon Millilith. Oof.
The Shiznayan Millilith. Liyue. So the Millilith shows up and he literally runs like Varasa style. He's out. And we learn that they've set up a disaster relief station at Wangshu Inn. So we decided that we're going to go over to Wangshu Inn and we're going to talk to some of the victims. It seems like a lot of them are asleep, but we can't seem to find Fritz. They told us they were bringing Fritz here, and we can't find Fritz.
Where are you, Fritz?
It's like the triage area.
I know. I felt like I was watching the 911 tsunami episode. It's on the brain. It's never leaving. So the innkeeper actually comes up to us, which is different than boss, because the boss is the lady inside that gives Zhao his sweet dreams.
Oh.
Oh, yeah, she does.
That's why he stays there. Okay.
Mm-hmm. The innkeeper comes up to us and he basically says, listen, I need your help. I need you to get rid of these meteors that are near the inn. And if you do, they should wake these people up and that should be helpful to you. And we're like, bet. So we go over to destroy some meteors. And while we're over there, we find some of the Fatui investigating. And they say that a harbinger is nearby. And none of us get like shaken by that. We're like, eh.
Like, what is that? I've never heard of that. We've never heard of it. I just started this game. What is a harbinger?
Yeah.
Even Fischl is like, cool. That's fun. Then we realize, though, that there are meteors that are still falling, and they're falling faster than before, and really faster than we could keep up with it. And that's when Fischl is like, this is a curse. And she freaks out, and she's like, do you guys know anyone that can undo a curse? And my first thought was Lisa, but we don't go find Lisa.
No, they're like, fuck that, Lisa. She's busy in the library with her tea.
But she's also like, we need a meteor expert.
Meteor. Oh my, I love those where it's like the God sent a meteor down. They're like, no, we wanted meat. And then the dinosaurs died.
Aw.
So we go up to Katheryne and we're like, listen, we need a third person. This duo ain't working out. It's not really even a duo. There's 4 of us. We need a 5th. And she says, all right, hold up. I'm going to call Mona. And she calls Mona and we tell Mona what happened. And she was like not expecting it. She seems very surprised.
Mm-hmm.
So we introduce Mona and Fischl because regardless of if you've done Mona's story quest, these two have never met. And Fischl goes on about her fucking kingdom that she's from and all that jazz. And Mona, like, hands on hips is like, what nation are you the princess of?
She's like, what are you talking about? And then we're all like winking hard behind Fischl, like, just go with it, Mona.
Yeah. She's like, I'm going to take out my scry glass and look into you.
Mona's just kind of like, oh, I get it. She's a weirdo. I guess I'll play along.
The talking bird stops her.
Yeah, at first Mona's like, I call bullshit. Let me pull out my water compass. And then Oz is like, please stop. There's trauma involved here. And then Mona gets it. And she's like, all right, cool. So then Mona makes a very interesting comment, in which case she says that the city has too much chaotic elemental energy and she needs to go somewhere where the ley lines are smoother. So coming back to the yarn cat metaphor that Lisa said about Mondstadt, we have more chaotic energy and it's not Klee, it's elemental. So we go out yonder. And Mona takes us to this place and she scries. And she says that she has not seen this before, what she scried. The meteors are coming from a person's constellation, which is pretty fucking meta. This blows my mind still as someone playing the game in 2025.
Yeah. I mean, she says it's the Stella Fortuna, and that's what we actually see falling from the sky when we make wishes.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, is that what you meant, Feeny? Like, because of when we wish, we see meteors coming down?
Not even that. It's just so fucking weird. Like, the whole game, each character, travelers, if you're newer or, you're free to play, you might not know too, you could get constellations of your characters. And every character has like a 6 constellation design, basically. And that's supposed to be like stars in the sky. Diluc's is an owl. Xiangyun's is a claymore. Kaya's is a peacock. And basically they're suggesting that the stars fell apart and fell to the ground from somebody's fucking constellation. Like, that's just terrifying.
She talks about how strange it is because the stars that make up constellations are real, she says, are real celestial bodies that are light years away. So how could they just randomly turn into meteors and fall out of the sky all at the same time? It doesn't really make sense.
So she mentions the Stella Fortuna, like Brandon and Tiff mentioned, and Mona is able to calculate the location of the meteorites for us based off of magic, I think. And she tells us where to go to find the meteorites and clear them up. So Fischl, Traveler, Oz, and Paimon, we go and clear up these meteorites. So now Mona is really curious about whose constellation it is because she's realized through us and through her own investigation that everybody who's waking up from these dreams is talking about a huge snowy mountain.
Mm-hmm.
But Mona says it's definitely not Dragonspine because she feels like the dreamers would have recognized Dragonspine.
Right.
So then we are told that there are more people over in Kinsey Village. So we go there and the Millilith is super stressed out because of all the meteors. So we offer to go clear them up. We do. And then we go to talk to people. The only person we are able to talk to is Gao the Sixth, who basically is like, I'm too hungry to talk to you. I was like, bitch. So we made him a cold cut platter. No, we made him whatever whatever the specialty of that area
The
is.
satisfying salad. Oh.
Yeah.
Imagine we just showed up with like lettuce and cold cuts for him. He'd be like, I've been asleep for days.
Yeah.
So after we feed him, he finally will talk to us. And he's like, that dream was exhausting. He talks about a huge snowy mountain and how cold it was. But more specifically, he says he feels like he was possessed. And that whatever was possessing him just wanted to reach the summit of this mountain. He felt like he was a totally different person and that he was being controlled to crack nuts like a nutcracker.
There's a lot of that going around.
So we go back to Mona and we explain all of this. And she pulls out her water scry again. And all of a sudden she's like, Leonard. It's Leonard. And we're like, Leonard from the Big Bang Theory? But she's like, no.
Leonard Nimoy?
Yeah. And then, right as she's having this epiphany, we turn around and we have Big Hat back at it. Our vagrant, our kind soul.
Sauntering down the street towards us.
It's like, oh, this sounds fun.
And Mona's like, oh, hold up. I sense danger. My spidey senses, my scryy senses are tingling and we need to get the fuck out of here.
I know, it's like Battle of the Big Hats.
Yeah. And so she teleports us away, which I'm like, I love this superpower that we never see again.
Seriously, whatever happens to that? Is she never in that much danger again that she's just like, oh, boop?
Yeah. Like, I know she can like turn into water and like, quickly sprint across the ground, but she can grab other people in like a little circle, like literally just teleport to a whole different area.
Which, like, what the fuck?
But, that's nothing new. We've seen, well, I guess after that and somewhat before that, we've seen other characters display powers that they don't do in game.
Yeah, we see it a lot in the manga.
Yeah.
Kaya, D-Luke, both of them.
And some of the cutscenes.
Ningguang with the Jade Chamber.
Yeah.
Like, so once Mona's spidey senses get us out of there, it stays on Scar, and he's basically like, God damn it, I wanted to kill the Traveler. And I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa, buddy, you were sweet talking me before with the Millilith. And then he says, like, he answered my question. If the Millilith wasn't there, I would have killed her. And I'm like, God damn it.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Technically, he says strike down, but I'm assuming that means kill.
Yeah. Yeah. Strike down Mondstadt's savior.
Yeah. What, is he going to go bowling and knock me over like I'm a pin? Like, that's the only death. And that's when we get the big Fatui Harbinger introduction, which this might actually be our first Fatui Harbinger introduction if you played from the beginning, because there's a good chance you might not have met Signora yet.
Yeah.
So they're like, ooh, big sign. And it's a little annoying because, like, now he's a Harbinger and he's mean.
I mean, he's still kind of awesome, though.
Yeah, but he's mean to me now.
If I played this back then, I would have been the biggest Scar, like, stan just because his sass is fantastic. I mean, it still is now, but I when I was watching it, I was like, I fucking love Scaramouche.
It's also one of the only times they've done such a big reveal like that, where someone pretended to be nice and then you turn around and they're revealed to be like a big scary villain and you don't even really know what that means. You're just like, whoa.
Yeah, it's definitely the first time, but there's another one of our BFFs that does it a lot. Anju.
Oh, I was like, Linny, child.
Anju. I make him a pair. I don't know why I make him a pair. Anju. He's fresh to me.
I know, but because he's your ingenue.
Yes, he is. I love him. He's so good. I need more of him.
I mean, he does do that in Natlan a little bit. I don't know if y'all have made it to him in Natlan.
It made me so freaking happy.
Yeah, I loved it. I was like, hello? When did you get here?
Uncle Glasses?
So after he's pissed that he can't kill us, we see a huge meteor fall. And as this meteor falls, Mona whips her head and she's like, how the fuck did you get messed up with a guy like him? I'm like, I'm not dating him, Mona. Like, we're not married. Like, there's no ring on this finger. Calm down. And I also was having like child flashbacks. I was like, if only she knows what's going to happen next. Where the next mix up is. And so they start to ponder upon whether or not the Fatui is the cause of this meteor shower.
Yeah, because she says that like any like basic astrologist could sense that was a Fatui harbinger. So she knew immediately that he was a harbinger.
But I love when she starts going down that whole thing about, like Finzo's saying about, did the Fatui like actually like cause the meteor, and like Paimon like exclaims it like, the Fatui did it. And Mona's like, Paimon, that was my line.
Yeah.
Get your own. That was the other side when you were like, oh, Mona and Fischl are going to be BFFs forever.
Yeah, definitely. And then Fischl kind of looks at us, and she like puts her bangs back with her hand. She's like, so I'm going to go.
It's totally, she's like, I got to go. This has been fun, guys. See ya.
I feel like in that moment, she was like, I am actually Amy. And I'm fucking scared. Like, I want to go home to my mom and my cold cut platter.
Mm-hmm. But isn't this the part, though, that she does? She kind of like breaks her little form.
Yes, she does for a second.
She starts like, she's like talking like a normal person. And like even Paimon's like, wait a second. Like, what is this? What's going on? Like, you were normal? And she like goes like, oh my God, I'm doing it. I broke form. And she like jumps right back into it. And it's one of the few times that Amy comes through.
Mm-hmm.
And we're checking out the meteor at this point, too. Like, we went to the big meteor, and Oz mentions that there's a lot of elemental energy there. And then Fischl's like, all right, we got to go, but I'm going to send people to protect you. And then as she's leaving, Oz goes, she means me. And I'm like, well, you didn't stay, Oz. So bye.
Now, what do you make of it that constellations, like the meteorites that fall from a constellation, contain massive amounts of elemental energy?
Well, if a constellation's there, you would assume that it's a vision holder, no?
Well, that's the question, though. We don't know if Leonard had a vision.
Mm-hmm.
And if he didn't, everybody has a constellation?
Mona makes it sound like everybody does.
I kind of thought it was just the vision people and Aloy.
What if every person has a constellation when you're born? Like, you enter this world, you get a constellation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you only start to gain that elemental power if you get a vision. And as your powers grow, kind of mimicking the idea of pulling extra characters, right? Like, you could assume that every time a person levels up IRL, because let's be honest, we do level up in our skill sets, right?
Mm-hmm.
So every time I level up in my IRL world, maybe the gods are bestowing more power on me, or Celestia, whoever, is giving out the vision.
Right.
I'm sorry, everybody could have a constellation, but their elemental powers might be different. And I think that this suggests that everyone in Teyvat is capable of earning a vision.
Right.
It's almost like the hidden power within.
Right, because it's based on like your will and your ambition. And aren't the constellations supposed to sort of dictate your fate?
Yeah, that's what Mona scries.
So, I mean, that would make sense that everyone would have one because everyone has a fate, even though we know it's manufactured.
Right.
But they're based on real, actual celestial bodies, according to Mona.
And like that, so like parts of the Stella Fortuna is part of the elemental pieces that then go into your vision? Or are you saying that normal people have Stella Fortuna? Like, does it actually get there? Like, you have a constellation, but does the rings fill in?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm saying that a person without a vision would have no rings filled in. Like they would just have like the blank.
The outline.
Yeah.
They wouldn't have they wouldn't have additional constellations.
So they're basic. They haven't like realized their true form yet.
A basic ass bitch.
They haven't activated their constellation in the sky.
Mm-hmm.
But who fucking knows, right? It could be very wrong.
Yeah. But it's a fun working theory. Also, like, does that explain why they have elemental energy?
Yeah.
I would think so, because it's tied to the ley lines in Teyvat, right?
Well, I don't know. Here's my other thought around it, and I don't want to say too much, but we do find out that Leonard is from a pre-vision time. So maybe it's possible that something has changed since then. And maybe everyone had elemental powers at some point.
Well, we don't know that he's from a pre-vision time.
Yeah, didn't we say the visions don't seem to show up until after the cataclysm?
You mean after the Archon War?
After the Archon War.
After the Archon War, I'm sorry.
And he's from 2,000 years ago, so he was like around the time of the Archon War.
Wait, you guys think visions happen after the Archon War?
Yeah, once the Gnosis were in place.
Who's the first vision holder that we have proof of?
Oh, I don't know. That we have proof of?
I mean, Vanessa didn't have a vision.
Didn't she? I don't mean, it wasn't covered in the manga, but did she get one after the whole storyline?
Oh, not that we know of. It's never been mentioned.
Right.
And I'm pulling up our timeline. Give me un momento.
We could throw Leonard onto the timeline.
So we said that Vanessa happened somewhere between 2,000 and 500 years ago. That's also when the Zhang Li's contract with the Yaksha began. The aristocracy from Mondstadt gets overthrown. Deshret has his death in the fall of Gorabad. So, I mean, we don't see visions. I mean, do the blanket friends even have visions? You would think they'd have visions.
Let me pull up the blanket. I do not see a vision on any of the blanket folks. Now, it doesn't mean that it's not on the blanket side of their picture.
I mean, we know that visions were granted after the 7 were chosen, because I know in Nouvellette lore, he talks about like how it's sort of like a pool of that elemental energy that gets shared with individuals. Like if they deserve like a little shard of that power. So yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I don't necessarily think the cataclysm has anything to do with it, but maybe it was like closer to whenever the Archon War ended, like a little bit after that, and maybe it coincided more closely with the cataclysm. But we know that like the whole point of the Archon War is because the primordial one and the second who came teamed up, and they were like, we need to create these 7 thrones to consolidate power. And so then you have the King of the Mountain fight where all the gods are fighting each other so that they can be on the throne. And we know that the people on the throne sort of control all of the pooled elemental energy for that element, and that they share little shards of it with people who activate, their ambition or will in order to like have a vision sent down to them.
I will say I don't want to agree with you, but I do think you're right.
All right.
Well,
I like my thought better, but I just proved myself wrong.
but I mean, there could be, we don't know, there could be something, because I can't think of an example of someone who definitely had a vision before the cataclysm. I mean, my first thought goes to Arlecchino. We don't know for sure if she had her vision before.
No, there was a man named Ingbert.
Ingbert?
Ingbert.
Uh-huh.
He was an aristocrat in Mondstadt 1,000 years ago, and he had a vision. It is known.
Okay, so 1,000. Okay, 1,000.
And I will say that the wiki does mention Leonard as a possible vision holder and Vanessa as a possible vision holder. But it does seem like the only one that has a older date than the Cataclysm for sure is Ingbert, and he had a pyro vision.
Interesting.
So yeah, fucking Ingbert ruining my plans. But it does seem like at least before the Cataclysm, they were less people with visions.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Which makes you curious, because if I understand correctly, while Celestia is really the ones with the power to give out the visions, they do allow the Archons a little bit of joy in giving out stuff. So I wonder if the reason there's more visions now is because the Archons need help?
Or they're getting tired of this shit and they're like, maybe if we get rid of all of the shards and give them to all the people, they'll leave us alone.
Or it could be the vice versa, where Celestia knows they're in trouble and they're giving out visions to mind control people.
But doesn't it make you wonder why elemental energy would be present up in the constellations to begin with? Because that means that the primordial one, when they defeated the seven sovereigns and took over all the elemental power, that they somehow utilized that when creating all of humanity's constellations and their fates. So doesn't that sort of mean that like everyone's fates are sort of tied into elemental power?
Yeah, I do. And I think that's why there's a whole big deal of a fake sky out there.
Right, because it's made up of elemental energy and not the actual like celestial bodies that are being reflected in the fake sky.
Exactly. Which makes you wonder, remember back in the desert, that in the Sumeru desert, we had that reflection of the abyss in the sky.
Mm-hmm.
It almost makes you wonder what else is a reflection at that point.
Yeah.
Is the whole fake sky just a giant reflection?
And I'm going to bring that up more too when we get to the next part of the episode.
Anyway, so where were we? Fischl is leaving us.
Yeah, Fischl leaves, and we know that the constellation belongs to Leonard, and Mona saved us from Skara. So I think we're at the point where we go do some research in the Mondstadt library, right?
Which felt so random.
I love that. Who doesn't love a studious moment where we're like, let's do our research? I feel like I'm in the Scooby Gang and Buffy, where we're like, we're in the library, we're doing research.
Where's Giles?
Yeah.
We go ask Katheryne too. We're like, hey, you know anything about a Leonard? And she's just like, there's a couple of them.
She's like, bebop.
Boop, 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 boop.
She's like, do I look like Google?
She starts making the dial-up noise.
She's just America Online.
Yeah. She's actually the Dewey Decimal System, because she was like, you can go find this in the west corner of the library. There's a book.
Which is Of Mountains and Seas, if anyone wants to read it.
No.
No.
You have to get the deciphered version, though, because if you get it, there's a whole bunch of blank spaces.
Redacted. But we find out that Leonard was alive. He was a real boy about 2,000 years ago. And Mona feels like if we are able to find the main meteor, that we will be able to find his like spirit inside of it. And she said, after all this reading, we find out that he was really interested in Pylos Peak.
Mm-hmm. Which is a snowy, dangerous mountain summit.
Yes, and the issue here is that it does not exist anymore because Venti got a little... Venti was like, fuck this landscape when he became an Archon, and he used his newfound wind powers to create a new ocean. Which, how do wind powers create a new ocean? I don't fucking know.
They blow all the snow off the mountains.
Yeah.
And then melt it?
It was down closer to the earth, or the bottom.
Like, is there that much snow on, like, the Alps that if they were to all melt, it would create an ocean?
Well, this isn't the Alps. It's Mondstadt.
Okay, but I have questions about the logistics of this. Like, I really want to know, like, if, like, Mount Everest, all the snow on it was to melt, would there be an ocean around it?
Well, according to my little looking up here, no, if all the snow and ice in the Alps melted, it would not create a sea, but it would contribute to a noticeable rise in the global sea levels.
Yeah, so Venti, what the fuck are you doing here? Do you know why? Because Venti didn't do it. Istaroth did it. Fuck them. They worked together.
Maybe they were just having a fight. They're having a snowball fight and things just got out of hand.
Oh my God. And then Egeria came over and was like, take my water. Blue.
Here, have a trifle side of the building.
Maybe Venti was a little more bitter towards Andreas than we realized.
Yeah, maybe.
He's like,
I
look at
love
this
that.
mess. Look at this mess, Andreas. No, now that I'm Archon, bye-bye.
And we do know that there were more than one mountain. Like Pylos Peak was not the only snowy mountain that got covered.
Mhm.
It does create a lot of questions because it's like, if Pylos Peak was like a full mountain before, then why I mean, it must be way lower in elevation because old Mondstadt is like very tall compared to that, and there's
Yeah.
no water around that.
Or Dragonspine, which is literally right there.
Yeah, Dragonspine would have been so much bigger.
Yeah, because they say like Pylos Peak is off the Falcon Coast, so they're saying that you still see that area and Musgrave, right? I think it's Musgrave.
Musgrave is the top of Pylos Peak. It is the peak. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but you're still seeing it because it was that tall, because the other ones are underwater. Fiends,
Right.
when you were underneath the water walking from
Nope.
Inazuma, was there mountains?
No, I was just going to say that. So about a year and a half ago, I glitched the system. And in Inazuma, I went into the water. And I walked the sea floor all the way to Musgrave. And there are no mountains under there. There is nothing really under there. They are not programmed in. Don't let them fool you.
Well, you're not supposed to see under there.
But okay, but I have so many questions, right? Because first off, there's an entire mountain range supposedly underneath the water, right? That's the lore. So like first off, that's terrible for boats. Like we're all like worried about like going to Inazuma because of a thunderstorm. I'm sorry. There's literally a whole ass mountain range underneath my boat right now. Like I can't come to the phone. I'm trying to navigate.
But hold on. Let's back up for a second because I know that was it Mona who's like telling us this story of like, Barbados blew all the snow off the mountains and created the sea. Don't you think that that's just a convenient way to explain the mass flooding that was happening in the world back then? Because remember in our timeline, the whole world was getting flooded like crazy. And so it would make sense that anyone that survived would be like, it was Barbados. He made the seas, even though it was really the primordial one flooding everything.
I'm saying no, because we have another story that Venti blew off mountaintops and created the archipelago.
But is that real?
Yeah, I think that's real because we literally see like cave drawings on the mountains.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think that Venti was 100% capable of doing this. Here are my two qualms with it, right? So when you're at Pylos Peak, quote unquote, Musgrave, there are a few little islands around it that you could maybe think are other mountain tops peeking through. Like you convinced me a little bit. Why the fuck was the spiral abyss at the top of Pylos Peak? Or was it not there? And then who decided that they were going to come and build the spiral abyss at the old Pylos Peak? My other question for you about this region comes to our extension site. So if you remember that in the water, somewhere between Musgrave and the cryo flower guy on the coast, we have the extension site of the Thousand Winds Temple. It's a little island, and it literally has stairs that go into the water. So what was happening over here? Was there like a giant snowy mountain range and then a castle? Like, what the fuck was happening in the seas? And I know Dormant Port, Dandelion Sea. Well, I don't fucking have it yet. So when am I going to find out what this is all about? It's very, I don't want to call it convenient because it's not convenient. It's confusing. But there's also the fact that at the Falcon Coast, you have like the fucking like abyssal portal that leads you to Musgrave. So how long has that been there? Did they?
Yeah. Is there actual lore about the spiral abyss?
We don't know when the spiral abyss gate was created or opened or.
Can I throw out a theory?
No.
What? No.
Of course you can.
I was so offended for a minute. I was like, what did you just say to me? So when you read what the Spiral Abyss says, like if you like go to the domain and you read it, it says rumor has it the people who have ascended to Celestia have also witnessed the same helix-shaped divine ladder that can be seen within visions. Venturing out into the universe and down into the abyss are the same in that both are braving the dark unknown. So this is suggesting that this is a portal into the abyss. What if Venti knew about it? And Venti was like, I can't have my people going into the fucking abyss. And after the Archon War, he tried to bury it.
But failed.
But he failed, but left it where it was because who's going to fucking go out there?
And then the Abyss Order created the little portal.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Maybe. Yeah, that's a fun theory.
Maybe during the he must have done this. He did it a while ago, we know, but like what if something happened, there were abyssal monsters coming out of there prior to the cataclysm? What if that was an entry point that Gold was using? We know that the Hexen Circle and Venti had beef. What if Venti was like, fuck you guys, stop bringing this abyssal crap into my nation? Boom.
So he put up a giant gate.
It's imaginative. I don't know if...
Not even a gate. He just tried to bury the island. Like, he tried to bury the gate and failed. I mean, and we assume that the extension site is something related to Istaroth, so he also buried something that was supposedly his best friend's.
I don't know. I still feel like it was the primordial one flooding the area.
I don't know. I like the Venti theory. Well, maybe Venti's just the primordial one.
No, we're just going to descend into chaos.
Wait, yeah. I'm sorry. Let's take a quick second here to just remember that the primordial ones is supposedly injured and sleeping. Who else has been injured and sleeping? Venti.
All right.
They're the only people to ever sleep.
Who is also associated with the time god, the primordial one in Venti. So who's to say that Venti isn't a primordial one or a shade of the primordial one?
His little wisp self.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are saying Istaroth might have been a wisp. Brandon might have been a wisp. Like, there's a lot to unpack there. And we also know that at the foot of the Venti statue, it says some wild shit about, like, being the gate to Celestia or something.
I don't know. I think Istaroth, honestly, in my mind, just becomes the White Rabbit. And I think that's why, because they're just running around with a clock. And that's why it's, like, they're, like, like, she's a little running around. So just to take my theory out, it's got no substance whatsoever. I just imagine it that way.
Anyway, let's move on because we're never going to finish this episode.
We're talking about important topics, Brandon, like you being a wisp. But right. So Leonard, 2,000 years ago, Mona tells us that the spirit of Leonard and his rock is probably at Pylos Peak, but it does not exist anymore. And she tells us the stories we just went over about the change in topography. So again, Venti, Animal Crossing, he is terraforming.
Mm-hmm. And she theorizes that the Fatui somehow have the ability to summon constellations down from the sky, which is very interesting.
Which, just typical of them. They could do everything. And so we go to Musgrave, and lo and behold, there's our new public enemy number 1, Scaramouche.
Yeah, because Mona theorizes that the core of the constellation is going to land there since we've determined that Musgrave is Pylos Peak. So she's like, there's going to be this giant core of the constellation that'll come down, and we're pretty sure it's going to land at Musgrave because that's sort of the heart of Leonard's desire was to reach that. And so we go there and we were like, oh, Mona was right, as usual.
The core was there and so was Scara.
Mm-hmm.
So Scaramouche is basically within a dream in the rock. He pulls himself out of the dream. Mona is shook. And he's like, I'm done with this. My research is done. I'll deal with you later. I don't know who the fuck Leonard is. Goodbye. And he leaves.
And then he says the famous line.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. I was too busy with him being like, fuck Leonard.
Yeah. He was like, well, he even said, he's like, I discovered something far more important, far more terrifying.
And then Leonard?
Other than Leonard. And Brandon, that is?
The stars, the sky, it's all a gigantic hoax, a lie. What was the jester thinking? He must have had some inkling of what we might discover on this mission. Would it really have been so difficult to give me a little forewarning? Or maybe he just wanted to give me a fright. Time for me to go out and find the truth. So long, suckers.
Oh my god, he says suckers. I'm
He
literally
says suckers.
but then he says suckers, and then Mona goes, "What a scumbag!" And I was
Yeah.
like, "No."
Yeah, so next time anybody talks about that, they've been recently
What a
adding in a lot more.
scumbag.
Like, yeah, this has been in there the whole time. They've been using our colorful language.
Fake skies and scumbags since
Yeah.
1.1.
And Paimon's like, that's really dumb. We can see the stars. It's not fake. And I was like,
Yeah.
go, you're right, Paimon. You tell him.
But then Mona's like, actually, she's
Yeah.
right. I'm like, what, bitch?
Why are they telling us all the most important shit in 1.1?
I was always taught to talk about the false sky during astrological readings. Could there be more to such phrases than I have been led to believe? What is she talking about?
Yeah, I've never gotten like my tarot read and then be like, the false sky. I'm like,
Right.
why? Like, this is not happening.
But obviously Barbaloth knows about it because that's who taught Mona.
Exactly. So, like, Barbaloth knows some stuff, but then what exactly did she say to Mona is what I want to know. Like, what exactly was Mona told about the false sky?
Yeah.
Because she seems genuinely shook by Skara. She's like, he seemed like genuinely shaken. I don't think he was lying. She's kind of like surprised by it. So she must have thought that the false sky wasn't like a real thing, right?
Yeah, it almost sounds like a pseudo title.
Almost a little give me at the end of if you think of it like a card reading or your fortune teller type of thing. It's like, the false sky tells me, but she didn't really know that she was actually talking about something real.
Right.
Yeah, it was just like her sixth sense almost.
Yeah.
But from there we do destroy the core. And we get a really cute little cutscene about Leonard at about
Mhm.
and he's 40 years old at the time, and he is acknowledging that he's no longer, in peak health to be climbing to the Pylos Peak.
No
And so
pun
what
intended.
what does he do?
He dies.
Whoa, not yet. He does one thing before that, Brandon. At least
And-
one thing.
Invents wind gliders?
Yes. Damn it, Brandon.
He dies.
I'm feeling so
Blah, blah,
Amanda
blah.
today.
Oh my god.
He died, right? He died.
And then he died. And then like I think they're all gonna die. Who said that?
Everybody's dead. We all
I
die.
didn't say it. Y'all said it. But yeah, so lots of questions here.
His wings of incompletion, which they're incomplete because they can only glide and not fly.
God damn it, Leonard.
hmm
Oh,
He was almost there, but he thought that someone would be able to reach the summit.
yeah.
I mean, in
Yeah.
his dreams, somebody almost did.
If you read his book, it's like disturbing because like he traveled with someone else who died on the way up the mountain, and then he like kept going.
And he still didn't make it.
Yeah, he's
Then
so
he
like
died.
optimistic. He's so like sunshiny about it. Like, I'm gonna make it to the top of this mountain. Excuse my dead friend over there.
Just starts kicking snow over the corpse. He's like,
Yeah.
you don't see that. That's not
He's like,
here.
He's like, oops, I broke my leg again. Everything's fine.
We just figured out, though, Leonard was an animo. He had a dead friend.
Aw.
His
Yeah.
vision was animo.
Totally.
Also, one other thing that Mona says that I thought was interesting was that she also agreed that this whole thing was a curse,
Yeah.
which was curious because she kind of was like, Fischl was right.
Yeah, it's like a cute sort of into their friendship because Paimon's kind of like, so you mean she's sort of like one of those people that is like right, but comes to that conclusion via a different avenue. And Mona's like, yeah, I guess so.
She's like, who would have thought there were different avenues?
Yeah.
Not me.
Yeah, she's like, she's a wackadoodle, but she knows what she's talking about at the same time.
She's like, I don't think it was her. I think it was her bird.
It was Oz.
But yeah, it's a lot to unpack this
Yeah.
this story, and it's really sad that there aren't others.
Since we're talking about our good friend Lenny over here, there's a lot of references with Leonard to IRL stuff, which we know that Genshin does quite often, where they bring in either real or mythical stuff from the real world and add it into the stories. And Leonard is definitely one of them. He really is kind of based off of, like, he's a Da Vinci, a Leonardo da Vinci type character who created this. He created the wind glider. It didn't actually fly its way up. It only glided, and Da Vinci actually never got any of his flying machines to actually fly. They glided, but I mean, Da Vinci was around in the late 1400s, early 1500s, I think he died. And he has all these drawings, and he like conceptualized helicopters and flying machines and things like that. And they have nods to him even in the book when we see the pages of the book. His journal has some drawings that a lot of people think that it's an actual nod to Da Vinci's flying screw, which is basically, he was basically figuring out that what a butterfly does, which just kind of does that whole screw down into that's how they land. In a crazy little way. But the other cool part about it, though, and the thing that just made me go even more so of that Leonard is Da Vinci, is that Da Vinci made Mona Lisa. And the fact that Mona was in it, I was like, yes!
What if he's like Lisa's grandfather?
Yeah,
Like
I want him to be related to, I want him to be related to Mona. Yes.
Just mix all the famous Leonardos, like all the famous L guys.
But even like the Mona Lisa is one of the things it's really known for, outside of the fact that it's probably the most recognizable painting in the entire world, and she has no eyebrows. One of the other things that she's very much known for is it's an example of the Fibonacci circle, which is this golden ratio that it's a mathematical sequence, but it also shows how visuals kind of go. So you've probably seen it, even if you don't know it as the Fibonacci circle or a golden ratio.
Shell,
yeah,
right?
It looks like a snail shell. And that is actually built into Mona Lisa's painting as well. And while I can't say for sure, but I think it's built into Mona's spyglass.
Oh.
But I might be looking for that too much to say that it's 100%. But that's going to be my little pullback to that too.
Fun. I like that.
That is really fun. I hope it's real. I hope Leonard is him. Maybe he painted the inside of the church. We just haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
Was that Leonardo?
No, that was Michelangelo, but it was a good one. I still liked it.
It was one of the other.
It was one of the other Ninja Turtles.
Yeah.
And then who cut his ear off?
That would be
Da Vinci?
No, Van Gogh.
Van Gogh. I'm Van Gogh.
I mean, I'm sure there's some others that cut their ears off too, but famously Van Gogh cut off his ear, married his cousin.
My favorite thing is I was watching a show the other day and they were talking about this painting and they were like, oh, I forget the artist's name, but they were like, he's the American Van Gogh. And I'm looking at the painting and I'm like, that looks nothing like Van Gogh. And they went, he got put in a mental asylum. And I was like, oh, okay. And then, like, he didn't cut his ear off, though. I was like, oh, how the fuck are they related? I don't understand. Doesn't even have, like, the colorful, beautiful pictures. Like, it was very dark. I was like, okay. American Van Gogh, opposite of Van Gogh.
Yeah.
Just not well.
Did he marry his cousin, too?
I don't know. I mean, it sounded like it might have been a Southern thing, no offense.
That's always incest.
Oh, we love it.
Should we do the false sky roundup?
Yeah, I think we got to talk about the false sky.
All right, so I made notes of all the different areas the false sky is mentioned later in the game after this. So we have, Mona obviously being told about it before by Barbarloth. We don't know what Barbarloth knows about it, but it comes up again via Dottore, who tells Nahida about it in exchange for her dendronosis.
I hate him.
Unfortunately, all the audience is privy to is that he says, that's the secret hidden by Irminsul concerning the truth of this world. I want to know what else he said to her, but we don't get to know that information, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So, Nahida, let us know. We're waiting on you. Conrians, they believed that the sign of Aposha, which is in the desert, and we talk about this in our Pariland episode if you want to revisit this or listen to it for the first time. The Conrians believe that the sign of Aposha was reflecting a reality beyond Teyvat's skies. They also get into describing it as a reflection in water, which is a little confusing. But you can definitely check that out in our Pariland episode. And that was the sign of Aposha, just as a reminder, was something where the abyss is sort of creeping into the world and was a reflection of something that was happening during the cataclysm when the abyss was spilling into the desert via Conria, which was underneath. The Staff of the Scarlet Sands, that weapon features a description which is narrated by Deshret, and among other very interesting things, it includes that the sky should have 3 moons, which I'm sure we're going to find out more about soon. with these 3 moon teaser things that have been coming out from Oyo recently. And it also says that the celestial sphere, quote unquote, is an illusion. So that's another source where we hear about the false sky.
Just to confirm, that weapon is Sino's weapon?
I believe so, yes. Yeah, I believe that is Sino's weapon.
I was just curious. Why does Sino get to know that? Is it because of Hermanubis?
Yeah.
Probably. Yeah, because Hermanubis has ties to Deshret.
The judgment.
Deshret knew it all.
In Before Sun and Moon, our favorite, the primordial one, it says the primordial one used the quote unquote eggshell to separate the universe and the microcosm of the world. And we've discussed that before, but I think it's worth remembering the word eggshell and how that is being described as separating the universe from the microcosm of the world. So get used to the idea of the primordial one's eggshell being the false sky.
I've been talking about this eggshell for a long time, guys.
Yes, you have.
You have.
And in this economy, the fact that she decided to use an eggshell, I mean, come on.
That bitch got coin. That bitch got coin.
More
she could
than
just
me.
throw away an eggshell, like that big, an eggshell that big.
Yeah, imagine what I could have made with that.
A big omelet.
How many omelets is that?
At least 70.
Just 70.
You're like the Guoba of Teyvat making eggs for everybody when he was cooking all of his peppers for the Liyue people when they were making their way down the hill.
I didn't share my
his little
eggs.
meat pie. She's like, I wouldn't share.
You were just making 70 omelets for yourself?
Yeah, I don't even like eggs.
I was seriously.
Anyway.
She's like, I'm gonna make omelets and then I'm gonna throw them on the lawn of the White House.
That's how I'm fighting the patriarchy.
Throw it on the ground.
Yes. Oh my God, Andy Samberg it.
Yeah. Happy birthday to the ground. I'm gonna link that on the site too, in case anybody doesn't know. It's fantastic.
So good.
So there's another really interesting one, which is the book collection Springs of Hidden Jade, which you can get in Liyue Harbor, I believe. And that describes this supposed adeptus, but is actually definitely an angel. Like if you go back and read it, you're like, oh, that's an angel. And this angel might actually be the daughter of Istaroth. And this is actually describing the same angel that is described in the book series Moonlit Bamboo Forest, which we talked about in our Moon Sister episode, the Moon Princesses episode, because in Moonlit Bamboo Forest, this character is telling the story of the Moon Sisters, like basically establishing the whole lore of the Moon Sisters and like the marriage and the exile and all of that. So that same character is in this other book collection called Springs of Hidden Jade. And they're described as a slender golden-eyed woman with long flowing platinum hair. She wore a long white cotton robe and a pearly raincoat and hat. And it talks about the different ways mortals viewed her and how they also like the difference between how they viewed time and how she viewed time. It said that a mortal views time as an eternal river of blood, but in her eyes, time is a barren wasteland with neither beginning nor end, blanketed in spider silk threads that stretch to unknowable distances. And she says that the mountain people once viewed her as time's daughter, like a white horse leaping from a pure spring, one whom no shackles could bind, just as it was with her proud mother. So it was with her. No wall or eggshell could bar her path. And this is making people think that she's Istaroth's daughter and that maybe her mother is, who she's referring to as the goddess of time or whatever. She says that the shepherds of the plains once pursued her steps, freeing themselves from the fetters of the wilderness, embarking on a migratory search of the water weeds, and thus did the golden white foal blaze the trail for all herds in the land. So she's saying that, the plains people saw her as a horse. She says the kingdom of the ocean depths once saw her as an emissary, and based on their imagination, they granted her scales and tail plumage, falling down in worship of the light brought by one who was both mother and daughter. So this is confusing because in one breath it's saying the people of the ocean saw her as something with scales and tail plumage, but then also calling her mother and daughter, which makes me think, is she Istaroth herself or is she Istaroth's daughter?
And then if she was Istaroth herself, that would make sense too with the eggshell, because then the eggshell would be the primordial one.
Right. When she's referring to mother, could that be referring to the primordial one versus Istaroth? So then it also says, In the days when mortals received the blessings of the heavens, great heroes and wandering champions would visit the clear springs for her blessing, fighting over the tenderness she left in her hurried wake. But when the moon palace collapsed, the chariot fell, and the three sisters were slain. These legends became lost alongside disaster's ascent and the downfall of bygone peoples. The heavens rained down cruel order, and from that day, the stars stilled their orbits, and the earth ceased to turn. As for her, she had no choice but to be trapped within the shell of the starry sky, forced to tarry within this stagnant foreign land, awaiting her mother's thousand threads, awaiting the erosion of hardy stone, awaiting the next encounter from beyond. So her mother's thousand threads, what does that remind you of? The thousand winds?
I had no idea. I was thinking of those witches from Greek mythology that like cut the threads.
I was thinking thousand winds, which is also tied into Istroth, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And like Istroth's tied to the god to Barbados, of course. So yeah. So very interesting stuff. I definitely recommend everyone go and reread Springs of Hidden Jade. I'm sure you'll gather some other nuggets from that. Moving on from there, we have Nouvelette's Teapot Dialogue, which I didn't even know about until I was researching this. And it says, as he's saying to us in our teapot, if you cannot break free from the eggshell, the world is not but a prison where you are blinded and confined. Don't be afraid of bleak desolation and poverty outside the prison, and don't fret about your stable rations being cut off once the prison is destroyed. Outside that world, I'll always be waiting for you. So Nouvelette is definitely team break the eggshell.
Yeah.
He's like, please.
Yeah.
Let my father come back home. Jibalanque, where are you?
But he's waiting for us. Isn't that sweet?
It is sweet. He's like, I got you, girl. I got you. The all-devouring narwhal description includes a little mention that maybe a higher power created borders to protect this world. It's just a fun little nod. Oh, this one's really fun. The Wings of Feasting, aka the KFC Wind Glider.
Woo!
That lore involves Alice returning to Teyvat from our Earth, as in regular IRL Earth, and describing dinosaurs, humans, and Sunday dinners to Klee. And it also mentions that Teyvat's borders have grown fragile these past 2 years. Looks like mommy's going to have to get busy. So that's just another little fun thing about, Teyvat's borders.
Like, mother, what are you doing? Are you repopulating the earth? Like, get busy.
She makes our guidebooks. So if everything's getting changed up, she got a new job. I mean, she's slacking. We don't have enough long.
I just love it that she's like, our borders are getting fragile. We need to make sure that Teyvat doesn't end up like human Earth.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, same.
Oh.
She's like, we can't let the egg prices get that high.
Yeah.
We can't.
Now, the last one I have here is the Crimson Moon Semblance, which is Arlecchino's weapon. The description for that is about the Crimson Moon dynasty. And it mentions, until the astrologists branded as heretics glimpsed in the inverted image of the false sky, the origin of all the world's fate. And this is like among a bunch of other stuff, but I just thought the phrase inverted image of the false sky was really interesting because it's talking about the astrologists branded as heretics glimpsed in the inverted image of the false sky, the origin of all the world's fate. So is it inverted because the crimson moon that used to light up Conria, quote unquote, long since fallen into the abyssal firmament, which is another quote from that description? Or is it saying that the sky in Teyvat is also in an inverted image?
Right.
So that's just something to think about. I mean, we still have a lot to explore with the Crimson Moon, which I'm assuming we'll get to more as this moon lore keeps getting released. But it definitely says that the Crimson Moon at one point had long since fallen into the abyssal firmament. It almost makes it sound like the Crimson Moon dynasty was trying to take back power from the Eclipse dynasty, maybe. Like there were loyalists to the Crimson Moon dynasty that were trying to convince susceptible leader at the time that they should go back to like worshiping the remnants of the crimson moon.
Right.
So there's a lot of interesting stuff going on there, but I just thought inverted image of the false sky was something to think about. Like why is it inverted, and is it just inverted down in Conria, or is it inverted everywhere?
And we see a lot of inverted things like the inverted city within the chasm, and then we have that inverted statue back in the first Dainsleif Archon.
Yes, exactly.
But wouldn't the inverted false sky be the real sky?
Yeah.
If it's only inverted in Conria, yeah, maybe. But we also get this lore from Sumeru that the false sky is like a reflection in water, that it's something that is elsewhere in the universe but is being reflected in our sky.
Almost like a mirror type of thing, which is a little bit reminiscent of Mona's domain thingy in the Golden Apple Archipelago for that summer. Archipelago. I don't know which way to say it anymore. I don't know what's the real one. I don't know what's I don't know anymore.
You started blending the two.
They are. But back in that summer event, there was a lot to do with a lot of those like little mirrors and water. You had to like go through different water pools and stuff, and it would end up at different spots and stuff. That might be something interesting to revisit.
Yeah.
I hate it. It's just so much.
Love it.
It just comes back to the so many unanswered questions again.
Yeah.
And
but it's fun to compile everything, I feel like.
Definitely. And to put the pieces together.
Yeah.
And like that angel in Springs of Hidden Jade, I was like so shook rereading that, because I know I've read that in Moonlit Bamboo Forest before, and I was just like, whoa, this is like definitely like a Seelie, but like we didn't know necessarily about like angels as much, and we weren't like putting all the pieces together. So it's really fun to go back and look at something that old in the game and to once again see that they have it all planned out already.
Yeah. I know it, and when they came out with those moon videos, people were like, "What's this?" And I was like, "What's this?"
Yeah. How do you not know about our moon princesses? We're sisters, but they'll be princesses in our hearts.
I know, I fucked that one up. That was episode 3.
You didn't fuck that up, because they are referred to as princesses in something.
I just preferred it. I was like, we're all pretty princesses. Leave us alone.
I remember in that episode, I was like, wait, I don't think they're called princesses. Aren't they just moon sisters? But then I found it later. I was like, oh, they are actually, it's in one of the books in the game, they are referred to as princesses.
Now, outside of the false sky, there's 2 other, I think, important themes that come up in this event, which is the elemental energy in Mondstadt.
Mm-hmm.
And curses. And so I touched upon a little bit with Mondstadt's elemental energy, but, the first thing Lisa says to us is that Mondstadt's ley lines are fucked. And it's interesting because that never really gets brought up again in Mondstadt outside of this event and Lisa telling us. So, and then actually that's a lie. It comes up again in Hidden Strife, which is the event where we got Diluc's high ponytail outfit. And there's a red ley line, which is a little scary. So I'm curious as to why Mondstadt's ley lines are so severely fucked up. Like, Lisa makes it sound like it's just Mondstadt that's that bad.
Yeah, I was going to say, is it just because maybe Lisa's only worried about Mondstadt?
Well, that's like a question, because I was going to say, like, obviously Lisa's never been to Natlan, so she doesn't realize what's going on over there.
Mm-hmm.
And we do know in Inazuma there are some issues with the ley lines. We see that in the One Raiden Shogun story quest.
Right.
But we also know that Lisa's been to Sumeru for a prolonged amount of time. And so I feel like for her to say Mondstadt's wacky, but never bring up Sumeru.
But how long has she been in Mondstadt? Because remember that quote from Alice? She said that the borders have grown fragile these past 2 years. So that almost implies that it's only gotten it's getting really bad in the last 2 years.
But we've had an event with Lisa in Sumeru, and she never said anything to us, too.
True, yeah.
Like, it would have been a good time to kind of come full circle with that.
Yeah. She was too busy showing off her new outfit down there.
Yeah, she was like, look at me, I'm Sandra D.
Mm-hmm.
But I am curious, there's a lot of speculation that Mondstadt is the end game location. Mm-hmm. And that shit is going to go down there. And I do, and the Spiral Abyss is located there. So I am curious if this elemental energy is going to come up again in the future.
Yeah, that is interesting, because I've just always assumed that the ley lines are going crazy everywhere, but I would be curious to know if they are significantly worse in Mondstadt.
Yeah, I mean, I would say Natlan is probably the worst, but it's also like a different case.
Yeah, they've been fucked up for so long. I
Because they
don't
didn't
think
really even
that.
have them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's an apples and oranges situation, you
Yeah.
know,
Right.
like we're both a fruit, but
Well, since Natlan got attacked, I mean, because they were in the worst situation, does that mean Mondstadt will get attacked next?
or is it being attacked from within and we don't know? I mean, we also know from early on in Mondstadt that there's a heavy abyssal presence there that we don't see elsewhere. We know that the Abyss Order is trying to attack Mondstadt's gates during the Archon quest. That's when we see D-Luke do his badass shit on the bridge with no Timmy. Luckily, he was removed. We also know that Venti has some sort of ties to Istaroth. We know that there is a temple basically to the time god in Mondstadt, and we know that there is an elemental dragon living in Mondstadt, and there's also like the ghost of a wolf god just like haunting around Mondstadt. So there's a lot of like stuff we don't really think about in Mondstadt when it comes to elemental energy, because Andreas's appearance is really a ley line thing. You think of Hidden Strife, there were a lot of D-Luke's past like fights being projected through, and Andreas is supposed to be like a practice thing for people, like mostly for the wolves, I think, right? The practice like fighting. So you have a ley line probably powering that. So it's just a lot of questions. It's a lot of whys, and I just think it's important for us to keep note of that. And also you have going into curses, you also have a spring fairy living in Mondstadt. So there's a lot of magic going on too spontaneously, and you know that the Hexen Circle witches have a tea party above Mondstadt. God knows what the fuck they're doing up there. But to curses, I just wanted to make sure that we brought up that curses are everywhere. Ever since the poetry event, we have seen them. We know that the Conrians were cursed, the Seelies were cursed, Diona was cursed. During the poetry event, Zhao even suggests that Shang Yun might be cursed. We do find out at one point that the gods, that I think it's during Fontaine through Farina and Focalor, we find out that gods do have the ability to curse a human, as if we see with Farina. So there's a lot of curses going on.
I mean, Timmy was cursed by Tiff.
Tiff.
It was on me.
And in this quest, Fischl specifically says, were they not a curse upon humanity, why then should they send humans into slumber? Suggesting that the meteors were a curse. She then says, to be lost in twist and death in an unending dream, 'tis the most dreadful fate imaginable for any living being. And then you can answer Fischl in two separate ways. You can either say, could what Fischl says really be true? Or the nightmares affecting the sleepers, is it really a curse?
Now, can we talk about why? Because Mona was very sort of, I don't want to say adamant, but she was very clear in her theory that the Fatui are the ones that made the constellation come down. So first of all, I'd love to know how they have the ability to do that and why they haven't done it before. But why would they do it?
I assumed that it had to do with the fact that they're trying to make a god and, you know, maybe even powering the delusions or even the Loom of Fate, that they needed they were trying to get that extra elemental energy to be able to port it into something else.
Oh, I see. Okay. So bringing down the meteorites with all that elemental energy to channel the energy into whatever they're working on.
And then if it worked, they could potentially do it again, you know, kind of like feasting off of the dead souls. That's a terrible thought. It was definitely what went through my head though. But yeah, that was my take on it. And the jester wanted to fuck up Scaramouche too. Like he didn't tell him about the false sky, and he knew he'd find out about it. So it could also just been like an elaborate hoax. Again, another hoax, a hoax to find a hoax, just to prank Scaramouche.
I feel like they had to prove it to themselves.
That they could do it?
No, I think they need to prove that the sky was fake. I think it's something, yeah. I think it's something with the Saritsa. Obviously, the Saritsa is collecting the Gnosis for a reason, and we think it's to take down Celestia. And if she's trying to take down Celestia, she's trying to take down the primordial one. So I think she needed to prove first that the sky was fake before she really set off on her plans. And considering we're assuming 1.1 is in the middle of the Mondstadt Archon line at this point, and if that is the case, we don't even know that Signora has taken a Gnosis. If that's not the case, we know that Signora has taken Gnosis 1. So it's almost like, all right, Signora took the first one before we try the others. Let's make sure that this theory is fact.
Okay. I like that.
But I'm curious why Leonard's constellation is the one that told the truth.
I'm trying to just sort of piece together separate things, I guess. But we know that the Conrians summoned the Traveler to Teyvat.
Right.
So could the Fatui be using Conrian technology to summon other stars down?
Oh, yeah. I think that's a great point. And does that suggest that we're a constellation in ourselves?
I don't think so, because I know when the Conrians summon us, there's like a little bit while we're like in orbit around the planet before we actually come down. It's like, I think I'm wondering if maybe we were caught in like the crossfire of something where like they summoned something as we were passing by and then we got pulled into the orbit, maybe. I don't know. Just a random theory.
It's definitely all possible. And I think that's the hardest part, is that none of this has any written fact yet.
That's what we love and hate about it.
Yeah, exactly. But I will say on that note that Kirara is unhappy. Kirara is pretty pissed right now. It's day 1 of season 6, and she feels like we're keeping her waiting. So I took the mail from her. I bid her goodbye. I did not give her a tip because of the attitude. No, I'm joking.
Wow.
I tip her. I always tip her.
In this economy?
In this economy.
Did you give her some eggs?
I gave her a 6-pack of eggs.
Wow.
So be grateful. So we do have 2 messages this week from travelers. Our first message comes from Alice SK, and they said, "What do you reckon are the nicest hikes in Teyvat?" Well, I couldn't pick one. I'll go.
Okay.
I picked 3.
Oh, okay.
I was like, oh, you couldn't pick one? So
You pulled a Brandon. All right.
Yeah, but I'm going to say the first 2 are ones that are obviously my top picks. Top of Star Snatch Cliff. You got to go up there. You got to watch the sunset from up there. And the other one is to go to, Albedo's lair in Dragonspine and have a cup of hot cocoa with him. But the not obvious one, I actually think it's really beautiful. If you go to Sumeru and you go to Beta Harbor, which is in the northernmost part of Sumeru. It was a part of Sumeru that was released with Petrichor. I'm sorry, with Chenyu Vale. There is a path there. There's actually 2 paths. One will bring you back toward the Vanarana area, but the other path goes up a mountain. And if you hike up to the top of the path, you can then walk up a grassy hill. There's also some like flying things that can help you. And you get the most gorgeous view. You can see the entirety of the Sumeru Desert. You can see the tree over in Pariland. You can see Gandharvaville. You could see Sumeru City. In the distance, you could see the Jade Chamber. You could see the Temple of Deshret. You can see Petrichor. You could see the waterfalls of Fontaine. And you could see Chenyu Vale and the little satellite thing that we push up into the sky. It's really pretty, and if you make it to the top, there are these 3 mushrooms, and if you electrocute them and then jump on them, you actually get a treasure chest. So it's a really pretty hike, and it's worth it in the end because you get stuff.
Cute.
Nice.
We got to do that on our next co-op.
Hell yeah.
So I have one that is in Fontaine, and I actually like drew it on the map because it's kind of hard to explain. And I guess it could go in either direction, but the way I did it at first is you teleport in Fontaine at the waypoint that's northwest of Weeping Willow of the Lake.
Okay.
And then you like walk down and just walk around the north side of the lake because it's beautiful and there's actually like a lot of plants you can pick up if you're farming for materials. And then you keep going and then just go straight east after and exit the top of the lake. And you go straight east to the little islands that border the edge of Fontaine where the waterfall is. I love any kind of hike that's like on the edge of the world. And that is literally like the edge of Fontaine. So you can sort of go along there, and I'm sure you'll find plenty of like chests and whatever things that you haven't done yet. But you can go straight down that little island chain all the way down to Lumideus Harbor.
Oh,
Or you could do it in
okay.
reverse. If you have some quests in Lumideus Harbor to do, I think some of those are on those islands sort of northeast of that. So you can start there and then go northeast and curve around. But I'm hoping Tiff will put this image on the website so you can see the actual route that I'm talking about.
I like how you're like, I'm hope that she'll put it on the website.
Please, Tiff.
I was gonna say, like, what are you gonna give me? I gotta ask. Huh?
A back rub.
Oh,
A sexy back rub.
Oh, oh no, Brandon, with this friendship line.
I mean, how can you say no?
I can never say no to you. I think that my favorite kind of like starts, it's almost like a less of a, I guess it's a hike, but it starts underground. There's this whole area in Chenyu Vale that's gorgeous and it's underground. And I think that it would be a nice, like, if it was a rainy day and you didn't want to climb a mountain and fall over off of it, you can climb underneath here. And it's called the herb housing hall, I think. It's so pretty. And there's all different like little caves that you can go into and it's just gorgeous. So I would say that that's
Oh.
probably the most untrekked
hmm
that you could definitely try out. It's just
Cute.
very pretty. But it would be nice when it's a hot summer day and you want to be cooled off. Go in a room.
Which just is me every day.
Well, thank you, Alice, for the
Yes,
question.
thank you.
Thank you, Alice.
Our next question comes from Clovey, not to be confused with Clarevy. And they said, genuine question, who made the new song for your 100th episode? So talk about our intro song.
Who was that? Hmm.
I wonder.
Mm.
It was Brandon.
Yeah.
Brandon, at the end of all of our seasons, Brandon does a remix of our song.
Yes, it's a little thing that I do for every season finale. I just feel like it needs something special. So yeah, I do a little remix at the end of every season.
It was such a fucking bop this
It
time.
was.
I
It was
was
so
like,
good.
did we
Oh,
change
thank
it?
you.
I was like, I'm bopping a little too hard, I think.
Well, since back in season whatever, when I stopped doing the guitar solo every time someone said Skynail,
Yeah.
I've been trying to pay tribute to it at the end of the season. So I was like, I'm gonna put guitar solos in this and make it just like a rock version.
Are you gonna Skynail your Skynail?
I did get Feeny to record herself saying Skynail to put at the end of it. Just like the previous season, I one of the previous seasons I had Al do it.
I think I sent you like 4 versions too. I was like, I don't know. I hope this works.
So Tiff, start clearing your throat because you're next at the end of this season. You're doing the Skynail.
Skynail.
And I did just want to say that our original intro song is by Johnny Bailey, who I think we've talked about before on the website too. So he made our original that we use all the time. And then Brandon does these special bops that honestly, I listen to it sometimes.
Do you feel like you're cheating on our song, on our theme
A
song?
little bit, yeah.
Like your side piece?
Thank God Brandon made it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if someone we knew didn't make it, I'd be like, oh man, this is wrong.
Ooh, although I would love to hear that. If anyone out there is a remixer and you want to try to remix our theme song, please send them in. I would love to hear.
And please remix us saying ridiculous shit.
I love hearing it, like anything creative like that anyone's doing. Please send it in.
But on that note, that is all the time that we have for today. Thank you, travelers, for joining us back in 1.1 for Unreconciled Stars in our season 6 launch. We have a lot of really fun stuff coming up this season, as long as the Fatui don't catch up to us. So definitely stay tuned. You can keep up with us by visiting our website, talesofteyvat.com. You can email us at talesofteyvatpod@gmail.com to let us know what you think of this week's episode and what topics you'd like to see in the future. Additionally, you can join our 18 plus Discord server, Shades of Teyvat, at bit.ly/Shades of Teyvat. all lowercase, no spaces. There's a lot of really great people over there to hang out with, ask some questions, talk lore, whatever it might be. You can follow us on Instagram, Tales of Teyvat Pod, or on Twitter, Tales of Teyvat. You can also find us on Blue Sky, Threads, and YouTube under the same names. Next week, we are going to be talking about Gaming, the boy who came the lantern right and stole our hearts.
And ran off to fulfill his Broadway dreams.
He chatted our hearts all the way to the moon.
Until then, safe journeys, travelers. We'll see you next time.
So long, nerds.
Wow. Oh my god. Aggressive.
So long, suckers.
Scumbag.